So guys, in our revision program, we are going to focus on the content. We are also going to look at exam skills. We are going to look at the structure and format of NSC exams, and then also we are going to focus on some of the concepts. Right. And that is the topics that we are going to discuss today. Of course, is going to be the micro environment, the market, the macro environment, all of our business functions, the relationship between the environments, and of course also business sectors in the following 2 hours. Right, so guys, without further ado, we are going to speak about the business environments. Now guys, when we speak about an environment in normal terms, we would say the environment is something like the weather or soil or water or whatever. But guys, an environment in business terms are all of those factors that influence a business operations, either externally or from inside. And we can classify the business environment into 3 different subsections called the micro, the market, and the macro environment. Now guys, we need to just pause here for a minute. The environments are separated from one another actually on one thing only, and that is the extent of control that we have. As you can see, we've got 3 environments. The first one is the smallest one because this is the business itself. And just like yourself, you have an environment that is you, and there are certain things in your life that you have complete control over. Right, I have control over all the things that I own. I have control over what I think and what I want to become, and so forth. And that is within your control, and therefore we would say that is your micro environment. Then we have the environment directly outside, and if you look at the slide, it says that's your market environment. Now guys, you also have a market environment. Your market environment are all of the people and things that you can influence but I cannot control. And I always say to my grade 10s, you've got parents. If you want a new Xbox, your parents are not just necessarily going to give it to you because you demand it. You can influence your parents by negotiating with them or whatever to influence their decision in order to buy you a new Xbox, but I cannot make them do it. Right, and that is all the elements in our market environment. We cannot control, but we can influence. And then we've got the biggest environment of them all, and that is the macro environment. And in the macro environment, I have no control or influence. And the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is if it's warm, I cannot do anything about the fact that it is warm. I can dress, though, appropriately, or cooler, or go and jump in a swimming pool, or whatever I want to do. But that I cannot control the fact that it is warm. And there are many, many such elements in our macro environment that we cannot control. So guys, a business is exactly the same way. They've got a micro environment, a market, and a macro environment, and they are separated by the extent of control that we have over those environments. Mr. Edwards, you need to tell me if there's anything that I've left out. No, this is just as an introduction.
I think it's 100%. It's a nice analogy to look at yourself and how you can actually be something along the lines of an environment, micro environment yourself. You've got full control. If you want to get good results, then you can study a little bit more.
Yes.
But the market environment, maybe your friends could be another example where you can influence them, but you don't necessarily have control over them. And then macro environment, you mentioned the weather. You don't have control over the weather, but you can adapt. You can make things easier for yourself. Maybe if it's raining, you get an umbrella or you get a raincoat. That's a way in which you can adapt. And in exactly the same way, you've got businesses that have environments and they also have to adapt.
It's also actually maybe very important to note here, Mr. Edwards, that the micro environment is also, there's another name for it, and that's called the decision-making environment. Because we cannot make decisions for things that we cannot control. We need to make decisions on things that we can control, and that is where that adapting comes in. So if it's warm, I dress, I take the resources that I have, my clothing that is more suitable to the weather, then I make a decision to do that. Or I own a swimming pool, I can jump into the swimming pool or whatever. That's my decision-making environment. So everything where we adapt will be in our micro environment. Okay, so guys, this is just as an introduction to make the rest of it a bit easier. And if you can use that analogy of making it applicable to yourself, maybe it's easier to remember the concepts that's going to follow. And I also want to urge you to think of a business like a person. A business has a micro market and a macro environment. Okay, right. So guys, the first environment that we are going to look at, of course, is going to be the micro environment. Later on, the market and the macro. The micro environment in the circle is the smallest one that you can see there because that's the business itself. The meaning of the micro environment. Now, guys, and according to your exam guidelines, you need to be able to define or elaborate on the meaning of the term microenvironment. And you can see that there are 3 different orders of questions. Now, guys, maybe I should just take some time to explain this to you. A question paper is set in the following way. There are certain difficulty levels or orders of questions. A level 1 or a lower order question are things that is basically recall from memory. There's no deeper understanding or application or whatever. This is just recall from memory, and the difficulty level of that is not very high. Now, a question paper needs to have 30% of the questions that are just basically recall from memory. Then we have the middle order questions. Now, guys, middle order are things where it's longer style questions where I need to elaborate a bit more, expand on my thoughts, maybe some basic application questions that makes up the middle order question. And 50% of our paper needs to contain middle order questions. And then we have higher order questions. Now, guys, a higher order question is a question where you need to analyze or you need to evaluate things or you need to make recommendations, where you need to think critically. Now, this is the more difficult levels of questions, and 20% of your paper needs to contain those kind of questions. So, guys, it basically boils down to the fact that if I know my work quite well, it shouldn't be a problem to pass. You should be able to pass very or relatively easily, because 30% of the paper, which is incidentally your pass mark, is made up of lower order questions. But of course, we want you to excel. So the rest of your marks need to come from the other 2 questions. Now, guys, back to the slide. Oh, sorry, Mr.
Sorry,
Edwards.
if I can just add something there. Grade 10s, this is obviously a new subject to you, all right? So we are introducing new concepts as well, and we have particular ways of asking questions, all right? So you'll have a look at the question that's being asked there, define or elaborate. It's been highlighted or bolded for a particular reason, because that will allow you to understand where it's fitting. Is it a lower order question? Is it a middle order question? Or is it a higher order question based on that action verb which we refer to it? So that is where you're going to identify whether it is one of those 3 types of questions. What you're also going to identify is by the mark allocation. The mark allocation will also tell you whether it's a lower order, middle order, or higher order question. Obviously, if it's a lower order question, you might have a question like list certain terms. That would be directly identified. List 5, for example, you would have 5 marks allocated to that. So you can use that as a bit of a clue. So these are sorts of things you've got to start picking up, asking your teacher about the different types of questions that you can come across in business studies.
Right. Also, sorry, Mr. Edwards, I think this is very important for the rest of the slideshow that they needed to know that. And also, guys, I know from of grade 9, you guys didn't really pay particular attention to mark allocations in the first place. You didn't pay particular attention to the action verb. But guys, now it is of critical importance. Sometimes you think, yeah, I wrote a very nice paper, I ought to do very well, and when the results come, then it's not even near what you expect. And that is because you did not really look at the question and what the question requires you to do. So that is, for me, very important. If there's one thing that you're going to take away from this presentation, is what to look out for in the question paper so that you can score the maximum amount of marks. Right, now guys, I'm going to take you back to the slide. You can see there that according to your exam guideline, you need to be able to define or elaborate on the meaning of the term microenvironment. Now guys, the definition part is not really a middle order question, that's a lower order question. Elaborate is a middle order question, but both of those are going to be marked as follows. Now you guys can see there that there's two ticks, a one tick plus another tick. Now guys, that is very important because what is required in a split mark like that is that you make a statement and then you need to explain the statement, and we call it a qualifier, and that is your second mark. So the first mark, if you're going to give me a short little answer like you used to in grade 9, then you're only going to get half your marks. You need to give me a statement in a full sentence and then give me an explanation, something that supports what you have said in your statement for your second mark. Okay, so it's very, very important that you guys understand that concept. And throughout this presentation, you will see some examples of that. Right. Now, guys, the next slide that we've got is an example question. And it says elaborate. Elaborate, middle order. Now you could remember that I told you that there's going to be a split mark. Elaborate on the meaning of the term microenvironment. It refers to the internal environment. Guys, just make it applicable to yourselves, of course. That's me, myself, the business itself, the internal environment of the business. Now, guys, this is how you can determine whether a mark is split and how it is split. It refers to the internal environment. Now, this is your statement. Now, the internal environment of whom? Yourself? Is it going to be your father? Whose internal environment? Now, guys, that is when the qualifier comes in, of the business. And if you only told me it's the internal environment, you're only going to get 1 mark. So you guys need to understand that you need to write very concise and in full sentences. Right, the next one says that it consists of all the activities. Activities of what? In the business itself. Right, the management has complete control. I have complete control over what? Over the micro environment. Now guys, you can also see there that there are 3 bullets. The closer that you can get to writing what the memo would say, because this is a typical memo, the easier it will be for the marker to spot your answers and where to give you marks. So get into the habit in business studies. I'm not saying do this in English or history, but in business studies, write in bullet point form. It makes it easier for the marker to spot where the marks will be allocated. Okay, as I say, you guys need to take these tips from this session if that's the only thing that you do. The content, yes, you can use it to fill in your booklets and to correct your answers, but for me it's not really only about the content, but also the skill and the way you need to approach your answer.
Mr. Van Zyl, if I could just ask a question. So if we were to look at a question like this that was allocated 4 marks, how many bullets would you expect to be given?
Okay, 100%. And unfortunately, the slideshow doesn't really put the mark allocations there. Now, guys, this is where the mark allocation becomes incredibly important. If the mark allocation in that question was 4 marks, now you can see that each bullet is worth 2 marks. It's 2 split marks, but every sentence that you've got there is worth 2 marks. So I would always ask my class, now how many bullet points do I require for 4 marks? I need 2 fully explained sentences for 4 marks, because it's 2 marks each. Now guys, you need to, that's why I say that mark allocation is incredibly important. And I know you guys haven't really done that or looked at it really in grade 9. You just wrote an answer and a bit of a paragraph. Now, in grade 10, that's going to cost you a lot of marks because you won't know if you've written enough for 6 marks. Now I'm telling you, you would know that if I've structured 3 different sentences and those sentences are well explained, then you will definitely get your 6 marks or 4 marks or whatever.
And it's a very good habit to get into, to provide your answers in bullet point form. I know in other subjects it might be relevant to give it in a paragraph, but when you are giving an answer and you know that you're looking for 2 marks per bullet, then you know if you've given 3 bullets, you are looking for 6 marks. If you've given 2 bullets, you are looking for 4 marks. All right, so structure your answers in such a way that per bullet, you're expecting to get those 2 marks allocated to you.
100%. Okay. Now, guys, you also need to be able to identify the components of the microenvironment. Now, guys, remember the microenvironment is that part of the business that's itself. So now we can analyze that environment and say, okay, what are the things that I am in complete control over? And you can see it there. We are in complete control over our vision, mission, goals, and objectives. Now, guys, later on, I think we will, in the presentation, we deal with in a bit more detail what these different concepts mean, and we will go over it so that you will find it easier to remember. Our culture is part of ourself, and therefore we are in complete control over changing it or keeping it like that. We can make the decision what we want our culture to be. Right, then we've got organizational resources. These are things, assets that I own or things that I use in order to run my business. I have complete control over that because I'm the owner. Right, then we've got management and leadership, which is a completely different concept that we will explain to you a bit later. Then we've got our organizational structure. This is the way we divide our duties up amongst all the different people, and who I can give work to or who I put in what position is up to me to decide. So therefore I am in complete control over what I do. And then of course we've got the business functions. Now if you think back to grade 9 in EMS, you guys have already done the business functions in grade 9. There are 8 of them, and every business has to perform all 8 of those business functions. And because these are things that I can structure the way I want to, I'm in complete control, and therefore it's a component in the microenvironment. Now guys, apart from just understanding this is something that you need to go and study and remember. Make sure you memorize all of these components so that when somebody wakes you up and say, what are the components in the microenvironment, you can immediately say these are the things. And if you understand it, you would be able to pick it out from case studies, and you would be able to identify this as microenvironmental components.
Mr. Van Zyl, you mentioned something about case studies there. You'll maybe have written a test for business studies already, and you can see how they are structured. Very often they are going to be asked with a scenario or case study, and from that case study you're going to have to analyze the case study itself and then answer using the information like the components of the microenvironment, and you're going to use that information to analyze the scenario. So you're going to need to know these sorts of concepts in order to answer those case studies.
Right. Okay. Now, guys, you can see here exactly what we have said to you. Identify from a scenario the vision, mission statement, goals, and objectives. Now, guys, your vision, mission, goals, and objectives is a bit more of a difficult concept to explain, and I see sometimes that grade 10 struggle to really differentiate between these 4 concepts. Now guys, I'm going to again try and explain it to you where I make it applicable to yourself. Nobody can go to you and tell you that you may not dream to become, for instance, an architect. If your dream is to become an architect, that is up to you. You decide what your dreams and aspirations are. Now, guys, a business also has a dream of what they want to become as a business. I want to be the best let's make it advertising, the best advertising, most preferred advertising company in the whole of the Western Cape, then that's the dream that I'm chasing. Now, guys, the moment that we have a dream, that directs us to what we want to do. It gives us direction, and now we can aim all our efforts into that direction. And that brings me to a mission statement. Now, guys, a mission statement says, I know that my dream is this. How am I going to go about achieving that specific dream that I am chasing? Now, you can say, for instance, if it's a advertising company, I will make sure that I only hire the best new talent out of universities. I will make sure that I meet the most ethical standards available when I promote a person's product. I will believe in my customer's product. For example, that might be a good way to write a mission or formulate a mission. Now, guys, from the mission, we have certain goals that we want to reach. Now, guys, a goal is a long-term plan of a stop that I need to make on my way to my vision. Now, in my grade 10 class, I always explain to my grade 10s, it's like a ship on the ocean. If I want to go from Cape Town to Japan, now, Japan is my destination. Your vision is also like your destination. If I want to go from Cape Town to Japan, I cannot just appear magically there. There are certain places that I need to go past on my way to Japan. Now, guys, those things are very important. If I go to Japan, I know I need to hit this island by a certain time. And then I need to get to another waypoint at a certain time. If I don't hit that waypoint, then, guys, my ship is off course. Then I'm actually going to Australia. I'm not going to Japan. You guys, you need to think of that analogy. Now, a business is also like that. Your destination is your vision, right? But on my way to my mission, to my vision, I need to reach certain waypoints by a certain time, and that is how I'm going to determine if I'm going to achieve my vision or not. Okay, now out of your goals, that is now the goals is those waypoints. I have certain shorter term objectives. I need to reach my objectives before I can reach a goal. I need to reach my goals before I can actually reach a vision. That is how you guys need to see how this works, and it has to do with the time frame. A vision is a long-term thing that I want to do, and on my way there, I need to hit certain waypoints or certain, how can we say, benchmarks before I can get there.
Different milestones, yeah. You want to be able to tick those milestones as you're going along in order to achieve that ultimate vision.
Okay, so guys, let's just quickly look at your screen here. The description is a dream that gives direction over a long period of time. That is, of course, your vision, and you can see the little icon there is a telescope. So that's your vision. The next one, 3.2, is a mission, and that is clear directives for how the business intend to achieve its vision. If you can remember, I told you that if I want to be an advertising company, I want to hire the best quality of people. I will make sure that my ethical standards are always up to scratch. Right, it brings me to my goals, and you can see the icon there of a target. That is long-term plans of what the business wants to achieve. And then 3.4 is my objectives, and that is short-term aims that the business wants to meet to achieve its long-term goals. Now, guys, you can also look for yourself at the examples that were given there, and that is McDonald's, and you should be able to relate because all of us know that business quite well.
Ms. Van Zyl, I just want to reiterate how important this is for a business to have these sorts of things in place. right at the beginning so that everybody is on board. If everybody knows what the vision of the business is, for example, McDonald's wants to be the world's best fast food restaurant, then that's the ultimate vision that everybody's going to work towards. Okay, rather than one individual working towards their own particular vision and another one working in their own way. At least now that McDonald's, all the employees are aware that they need to be working towards the ultimate vision of being the best fast food restaurant. If you go down further to the goal to dominate the fast food industry globally within the next 5 years, everyone knows that they need to put in as much effort as possible in order to ensure that they reach that goal of being a global fast food industry or dominate the fast food industry globally in the next 5 years. So everybody is on the same page. That is the main aim.
Mr. Edwards, I think that's also very important to note there. You can see that under the goal, it says to dominate the fast food industry globally within the next 5 years. Goals are a bit more long-term. Objectives are shorter-term. To employ an additional 1,000 people by the end of the month, that's anything within a year is an objective. Anything more than a year or up to 5 years is a goal. And that is the way that you are going to see from case studies or scenarios which ones are which. Okay, so make a very big note there that it is about the time frame. And guys, you could also see that with goals and objectives, it has to be specific. You need to be able to measure it, whether you have actually achieved what you wanted to achieve. And that is what makes objectives so important. We speak about SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and within a given time frame, so that I can go back and measure my actual performance to see if this ship of mine is still on course. Right, guys, because of the time frame, I can spend a lot of time on vision, mission statements, but because of the time frame, I'm going to have to move on. Right, now guys, the next one is an organizational culture. Now guys, organizational culture, as you would know what a culture is a specific way of doing things. It's a specific way that we view the world and what we see as right and wrong. That is what makes up a culture. Now every business has a specific culture, and I'm quite sure you guys will agree with me that the school that you attend is very different to the school down the road or your other schools that you have probably attended to before. It is not the same. The way they do things, the way kids interact, the way the teachers interact with one another might differ. And that is because there's a difference in the organization's culture. What they believe is right and wrong differs across different businesses. Right. Now, guys, in terms of the organizational culture, your exam guidelines say you need to be able to elaborate, explain, or discuss the purpose of the organizational culture. And guys, the moment that you need to do that, you can see it's middle order, and it's going to be split marking as we have explained to you before. Right. So an example, outline the purpose of the organizational culture. The organizational culture, of course, and you can see there are certain sentences. Now, guys, I want you to have a look at the verb, the action verb, outline. Now, guys, outline is actually a lower order question. It requires a full sentence. I'm only looking at the essence of the sentence, and as you can see on this slide, it is allocated at the end of the sentence. It's not a split mark, so you don't need a statement and a qualifier. Now, guys, as you can see, there are 4 bullet points there. If the question was for 4 marks, and you will see in your section B type questions that we will do at the end, you will see that mostly the mark allocation will be between 4 and 6. If it's a 4-mark question, you only need to remember 2 of these bullet points. Now, in order for you to fill in your booklet that you've received the correct answers, I will quickly go through that. It refers to the personality is the answer. The personality of the organization, the way they do things that makes them different. An organizational culture consists of different beliefs of everyone working in the business. It influences the way people in the organization interact with each other as well as with, and the answer there is stakeholders. Now guys, maybe a stakeholder is also a loaded concept. You guys have probably heard of a shareholder or a co-owner of a company, but a stakeholder is actually anybody that is being affected by the operations of a business or that could potentially be affected by the decisions a business make. And that could include your employees, their families, the immediate community, all of the people that might be affected by the operations of a business is a stakeholder. Right, the organizational culture influences people's actions and attitudes is the answer there. Right. Now guys, the next one that we are going to do is organizational resources, and as I've said to you guys earlier, organizational resources only refers to the things that we have control over, or in some cases that we own. These are the things that a business needs to use in order to run successfully. Now we can split them into human resources, physical resources, financial resources, and technological resources. Now guys, you need to be able to identify these resources from case studies, or you need to be able to list or explain it, which we will do for you right now. Okay, now guys, you can see your exam guideline says you need to be able to name or state the organizational resources. Now guys, it's just recall from memory. You just need to go and memorize those things, and normally there will be 1 mark allocated the moment that you see the word state or name or give. Those 3 things are lower order questions, and in many cases it will be 1 mark, so please look at your mark allocation to know how many you need to write down. Don't write down more than the amount of facts required, because it will not be marked. They will only mark the first 5 if the question said name 5 things or list 5 things. Right, an example is name the organizational resources. We've got human, these are the people working for us. Physical resources are everything that's got to do with raw material, things that I can touch. Physical resources. Financial resources refers to money, and technological resources refers to software or computer systems or any system that we use that are new that helps us to produce things easier and cheaper. And as you can see, the mark allocation is 1, 1, 1, 1. Right. Guys, you also need to be able to identify the organizational resources from given statements or scenarios. Finance, of course, if you see the pictures there. Technological resources, there's the computers. There are people there, so that's human. And of course, the money is financial resources. Okay, now guys, the next question that we are going to look at is the importance of an organizational structure. Now guys, every business is divided or is made into a structure, the way we divide the duties and the resources to fulfill in specific tasks, and that is called a structure. Now let's see what you need to be able to do when it comes to the structure. It says outline, explain, describe, or discuss the purpose or the importance of a business organizational structure with specific reference to an organogram. Now, we will explain an organogram to you now shortly. Now, guys, you can see there an organizational structure refers to the different departments in the organization and how they are organized in an organogram. Now guys, I don't want you to just look at different departments of a business. We can also have a business structure in small businesses that do not have different departments For instance, a partnership or something where there's only two people, it's a smaller kind of business, but they still divide the duties up in a specific way. That is how we divide duties in a business. Who is responsible for what, and we also need to give them the resources in order to execute the duties that we have assigned to them. Right, it says there every business must be organized in a structure. Now guys, I want you to go and think, how would you split that mark? Now get a pen in hand and then you place the ticks where I'm going to tell you, and then I'm only going to do 2 of them. The next 3 you need to go and attempt on your own to put the marks in. Right, the first one says every business must be organized. Organized in what? In a structure. So organized is the 1 mark, the structure would be the second one. Now the next one says each person's tasks and level of authority and responsibility. 1 mark. That's my statement. What must we do with that? We must indicate it, and that indicate would be your second one. Now guys, you can apply your own knowledge here to add the ticks in for the next 3 sentences so that you can start thinking in that way. Where would we have placed the ticks so that you know how to structure your answers in a question paper?
Mr. Van Zyl, just to confirm, if you're looking at that question itself, it's got outline, explain, describe, and discuss. Note, remember when we referred to outline previously, that was 2 marks at the end.
That's okay.
Now we've got explain, describe, and discuss. That's where you've got the split marking, where you've got the statement and then you've got to qualify that statement. So you've just got to provide some more information qualifying that initial statement that you've made. So just remember, this could be outline, which is a lower order question, but it most probably will be explain, describe, or discuss, which will be split marking.
Right. Okay. Now, guys, it also says you need to have specific reference to an organogram. Now, an organogram is just a graphic representation of how these duties and resources are divided or split. Now, you can see on the slide there is an example of an organogram. At the top, you have the board of directors. And underneath them, we have the chief executive officer that reports to the board of directors. Now, guys, now the chief executive officer cannot do all the work himself. He needs to split the duties up into different departments. Now you've got marketing managers, operations managers, and administration managers. And under them, they can further split it up into a sales team and an advertising team. And the same with the operations and so forth. Now, guys, in practice, organograms are very, very complicated. If you look at the big companies' organograms, it actually goes across pages and pages of different ways that they have allocated duties. But as long as you guys know that an organogram is just a graphical representation of how the different duties are split in a business.
And it's very important in businesses to have that organogram in place, because people need to know who they need to report to. If there's issues, who do I discuss the issue with? So as you can see in the organogram that has been provided, the advertising and sales, they need to be reporting up towards the marketing manager. The marketing manager then reports up to chief executive officer, and so on and so forth. As Mr. Van Zyl refers, there are massive amounts of structures in place for big businesses, and that's where organogram is really critical to the success of that business.
Right. Guys, it's also very important to note that that organogram can change. You've probably heard of the term before, restructuring. Now, when a business restructure, maybe they have decided that it's going to be cheaper to produce a certain product at a different place or outsource it. Then they close that department down, and that it removes those duties out of the structure. Or there's new technology that makes certain people's job redundant. They are not needed anymore, and therefore that person is removed from the structure. Remember, every person that you add into the structure, I need to pay a salary for, and that makes it very expensive. The larger these structures become, the more inflexible they become, because you can think if there's a change, all of these people need to be informed, and it takes a while for all of the information to filter down and everybody to be on the same page before we can actually implement a new strategy. These structures, if they are too large, is normally not a good thing for businesses. We want to keep the structures as small and flat as possible so that we can adapt easily. Right. Okay. Then, guys, we are going to move on to the market environment now. Now, we have just now done certain concepts in the micro environment. Now we are going to look at the market environmental things, and then we are going to look at the macro environment. Now, guys, I'm going to let Mr. Edwards take the lead on the market environment for us.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Van Zyl. So, one thing that you need to realize, you may again have actually written a paper already, and chances are this question was asked. Discuss the different business environments and the level of control that's attributed to those environments. And normally it's upwards of 6 to 9 marks that's allocated to this type of question. So it can be very, very important. And I've also seen it in grade 12 papers as well. So it's something to really, really focus on. All right, but focusing on the market environment, let's have a look. So market environment is the part of the environment that surrounds a business. So it's anything that is affected or the business has an effect on, all right, but has no control, but can influence. All right, so let's have a look at the type of question that can come up over there. The first one is define or elaborate on the meaning of the market environment. Again, looking at the mark allocation, that would probably be upwards of 2 marks, split marking there, statement and qualifier. All right. So it is the environment immediately outside the business. Okay, there should be some answers that you would need to be placing in there. Market environment surrounds the microenvironment. And lastly, and probably most importantly, something that you need to remember when answering this type of question, management has no control but can influence. So let's use an example. So if you have got customers, right, you have no control over those customers, but you can influence those customers' decisions as to whether they purchase your product or not. That might be in a way of advertising to those particular customers, or changing the price point at which you're placing that product, and also maybe improving the quality of that product. So straight away you can start to identify, yes, you don't have control over those customers, but you can influence their decision-making ability. All right. So we also have components of the market environment. First and foremost, we've got the consumers, which I've referred to earlier. You've got suppliers. Okay, again, suppliers, you don't have control over them, but you can influence them. You can go to your supplier and say, I can get my products cheaper somewhere else. That, no doubt, is going to have an effect on that supplier's decision as to what to charge you for the supplies that they have given you. Right, then we move on to intermediaries. Intermediaries we're going to get on to a little bit later. It's the middle person, the person that is performing a role in order to ensure that the product gets to the customer. We will then look at competitors, and then after that, we've got non-government organizations. Okay, non-government meaning that the government isn't involved in them. Your regulators, your strategic allies, and also your unions, trade unions. We'll get into a little bit more depth in a moment. Let's first look at a question that could come up. Middle order question. note, elaborate, describe, explain, or discuss the components of the market environment. Note that we have just gone through all of the options there. You must be able to identify the components of the market environment out of a given scenario. Again, this is the way we like to ask a question in business studies, because it requires you to think and know and understand the concepts that you're dealing with along the way. All right, so you would have a scenario where you would have to pull out certain components, identify maybe a trade union is mentioned in this scenario, or there's mention of a competitor. If you're looking at the McDonald's example earlier, maybe they're talking about steers around the corner, and you need to identify that we are talking about the competitor in the market environment. All right, so let's go a little bit more depth looking at consumers. So consumers are the final users of the products and services. You yourself could be a consumer if you are purchasing that Xbox that Mr. Van Zyl was referring to earlier. A consumer that buys a business goods or a service is that business's customer. And the consumer market can further be subdivided into things like durable products, semi-durable products, non-durable products, and services. All right, services are pretty straightforward. Repairs, non-durable products, newspapers, semi-durable products, furniture, and durable products can be things like TV sets. Moving on to suppliers. Again, you don't have control over the supplier, but you can influence some of the decisions that they make. Suppliers include factories, suppliers of goods or services that are bought by businesses to operate the business itself. Individuals or agents that supply the raw materials, products or services to your business. For a business to survive in a competitive environment, the supplier must supply the correct amount of goods at the right time, the right price, and also on the right credit terms. Now, if we look at the current situation, we had lockdown over the last 2 years. And you might have heard on the news or people talking about the supply chain and some of the issues that we've had with regards to the supply chain and getting products to the customers or the businesses at the right time. Many people have had major issues, or many businesses have had major issues. You might also remember there was the Evergreen ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal. That actually had a knock-on effect with the supply chain, and that had major issues where the businesses were concerned. So again, to reiterate, suppliers, you don't have control over them, but you can influence them because there are possibly other options available to you.
Mr. Edwards, I think it's nice to note here, the moment that you can enter into negotiation, the moment that I can sit across a table of somebody else and I can bargain for better prices or whatever, I'm in a position to influence. They also, of course, has the position to influence us. But the moment that we are in a competition in terms of negotiation, then it is in the market environment. I always say that to my grade 10s. The moment that I can bargain, then this then forms part of the market environment because I'm in a position to influence.
So there's bargaining power, which they often refer to it as. All right, let's move on to intermediaries. Now, I referred to as a middleman, the person that's ensuring that products are getting to the customer. Right, so they help to promote goods, to sell goods, and distribute the consumers. All right, so you might look at different industries where you've got a specialist that is performing this role as an intermediary. All right, so if you look at the property market, all right, so you might have heard of an estate agent. An estate agent performs that role of an intermediary. They are professionals in selling properties. They know exactly what is required in order to sell a property. Okay, so if I wanted to sell my property, I would need to go to an estate agent who then has the ability to contact customers, to get in contact with those customers, market the property. They are performing that role. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of a charge for that role that they play to the business. Right. They bridge the gap between the manufacturer and the consumer. Maybe the manufacturer doesn't have that contact with the consumer, and they perform that role. They bring the products and services which to the consumer. So think of Uber Eats. Okay, Uber Eats performs a role of an intermediary. Okay, I don't necessarily want to have to go and visit the local Spur in order to get some takeaways or pick up my takeaways. I can just go onto my app, Uber Eats, and they are going to be doing the job for me. Correct. So they are performing the role of an intermediary. Marketing intermediaries are wholesalers, retailers, spaza shops, agents, brokers, and representatives, all performing that role, okay, for marketing the product. All right. Financial intermediaries are banks, insurance companies. Okay, so they will be performing that role of providing that insurance. An insurance broker, for example, they offer you different options as to who to go with, which insurance to take out. They are professionals. They know exactly what is required within that industry. So they perform that role.
Right. Mr. Edwards, I've got a nice other example that I can also use. Many of us, let's take pasta for example, Fattis and Moni's pasta. I like Fattis and Moni's pasta. It is actually manufactured in Malmesbury where I live. Now guys, if you like Fattis and Moni's pasta, I'm not going to travel all the way to Malmesbury to go and buy Fattis and Moni's pasta from the factory. I want to buy that low-cost product at a place where it's convenient for me. It has to be brought to where you can conveniently get hold of that product, and that is where the intermediaries come in. It's not Fattis and Moni's that sell it to you, it is Pick n Pay or Spar. So they are the intermediaries. They are the people that distributed the products to such a way where the consumers can easily get hold of it. And that is just an easy way to remember intermediaries.
Right, some other examples, and remember these are those non-government examples. You've got the competitors, all right? Again, you don't have control over them, but okay, you can influence them by maybe changing your price point, increasing your quality of the product. Okay, so you might have ShopRite and Pick n Pay, okay, that are competitors in the retail market. Then you have regulators, all right? Regulators are institutions that regulate certain industries, all right? So if you're looking at the alcohol industry, there will be a regulator that is making the statements or the laws stating that no under 18 can have access to alcohol. Right, so that would be performing that role of a regulator. Strategic allies refer to two or more businesses working together to enable them to acquire the lack of expertise they have from another business. So they might not have all the information, but they're able to gain access to that information from the other business. Now, the best example that I often use in the classroom is Discovery. Discovery has linked up with numerous different entities, Virgin Active, they've linked up with Pick n Pay, Smart Shopper. So they have been absolutely fantastic at partnering up with businesses so that they can both mutually benefit from the relationship or the partnership that they've got. All right. Trade unions, moving on to trade unions, you might know a couple of trade unions like the National Union of Mine Workers, National Union of Metal Workers, SARTU. These are all trade unions that are not non-government organizations, and they represent the employees in the business environment. You might have referred to that, if I remember correctly, in grade 9 EMS as well. So you should have a good understanding of trade unions. Right, so some examples. Let's look at the example questions that you could come up with there. Note that the first one says lower order question, give. Give is the action verb there. Give examples of other organizations or civil societies. Then you move on to a middle order question and note the type of marking that is used here. Explain or outline, right? So explain would be your split marking. Explain examples of the other organizations or civil society, or outline, and remembering outline is the 2 marks at the end of that question. Okay, a little bit more detail with regards to unions.
Mr. Edwards, I wonder, sorry that I interrupt. In the unions thing, they've done this in grade 9. They can just maybe just look at this and they can pause if they want the information.
I agree. I think we're a little bit tight for time.
Exactly.
So just to reiterate there, you can have a look at trade unions and the examples of trade unions. There you've got the NGOs, non-government organizations, non-profit organizations that do not fall under the control of government. All right, so there you've got some examples. Gift of the Givers, Save the Children, and Reed Educational Trust. Regulators, all right, regulators, organizations that ensure that the code of ethics and rules of fair business are adhered to. So NERSA is one example with regards to the energy industry. Okay, so often you'll hear Eskom and NERSA in the news. Community-based organizations, CBOs as they're often referred to, these organizations that operate within communities, all right, so quite different to the NGOs, okay, because this is very community-based. So things like your Haven night shelters, your domestic animal rescue groups, different to things like the SPCA, which is far greater and bigger entities.
Yes, Mr. Edwards, you've hit the nail on the head there. Sometimes it is difficult to really think what is the difference between an NGO and a CBO, and that is really in the scope of operations. If I look at an organization like Cancer is a non-profit company for that matter, but they are there to deliver a specific service to cancer patients and to create awareness of cancer and how to prevent it, and they do a lot of research on cancer. So they don't do this to make a profit, and they deliver services sometimes where the government lacks, that the government just doesn't have the capacity to do, and that is what they do. A CBO is like Cancer, but exactly for a smaller community. Cancer's reach is national. CBOs are normally for your community.
And they would know exactly what is required within that community itself. So very more specific than an NGO.
Old age homes, for example, for me is a very good example of a CBO.
Yep. Right, looking at a type of question that can come up, opportunities and threats in a business context. So middle order question, explain the meaning of opportunities and threats in a business context and give practical examples of each. All right, remembering that opportunities and threats are external to the business. If you remember, this nice way to remember is the SWOT analysis, strengths and weaknesses, internal. Your opportunities and threats are external to the business. Okay, so things like your competitors, things like, which we will discuss in a moment, in the macro environment, economic changes and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's look at some examples that could come up here. Opportunities in a business context. Opportunities are any factors in the external environment that will contribute or is already contributing to. Ms. Van Zyl, do you have an idea there?
Yes, I do. Guys, before I answer that question, I just want to say that it is very important that you guys know when we speak about external, it's anything that doesn't fall within your micro environment. Your micro environment is internal. So all of those components that we've done in the micro environment, that is where your opportunity, your weaknesses and your strengths will come from. Anything that's outside of that, your market and your macro environment contains all your opportunities and threats. Right. Opportunities are any factors in the external environment that will contribute or is already contributing to the success of the business. The word there is success. Businesses need to constantly seek opportunities in the external environments in order to remain competitive, is the word that you are looking for there. And then, of course, there are certain examples, decreases in taxes, closing of competitors' businesses, decrease in interest rates. All of these things are external factors. We don't have any control over my competitor closing down. But if they do, there's less competition in the market for me, and therefore it will contribute to my success. And therefore it is an opportunity.
And businesses should keep an eye out for these sorts of things to ensure that they take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them, because no doubt one of your competitors will take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay, now looking at threats there. Threats are any factors in the external environment. Now guys, that word external environment will be very important if you discuss opportunities and threats, not just giving the examples. If you discuss it, I want to see that word there, external, because otherwise we can be referring to weaknesses and strengths. Okay, so it's very, very important, that word external. Threats are any factors in the external environment that will stand in the way of business, is already standing in the way of businesses achieving their goals. Right, or vision, or any of those things can be appropriate words there. Businesses have a challenge of constantly identifying threats in the external environment and devising. The word that you are looking for is a strategy. A strategy is your plan of action, and if you can think back to the ship analogy, that is your road map. You plan before you leave for Japan. You need to have a road map in mind, and that road map is your strategy. Now, any business that wants to achieve a vision needs to have a strategy, a plan of action.
Spencer, if you can identify the examples that are given in that slide for the threats, they're actually complete opposites to your opportunities that have been given. So if you look at the opportunities, it states a decrease in taxes, whereas the threat is an increase in taxes. The closing of competitors' business is an opportunity, whereas the threat is new businesses offering similar products. So complete polar opposites, but you can understand why that would now be considered a threat. An increase in interest rates, that obviously makes it more expensive to borrow money.
Yes, Mr. Edwards, maybe we can also just explain to them another way that we can ask this question. And I'm very fond of asking a question like this, is when you have a case study, a whole scenario that's describing a business, and in that scenario is hidden strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. And then you need to be able to identify those and classify it as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Basically compiling a SWOT analysis. Now, guys, that is a higher order question because you are compiling something. You need to be able to think critically. What is internal? What is external? You compare it to whether I've got control or not, or to the components of those specific things. So that's why knowing the components of the different environments is so important. Right. Now, guys, the next environment that we are going to do is, of course, the macro environment. We have done the micro, we've done the market, and what we now need to look at is the macro environment. Now, guys, the macro environment, of course, is that big environment that we have absolutely no control over and we have absolutely no influence over. The only thing that is left for us to do is to adapt. And to bring me back to the first example that we had earlier, when it is warm, there's nothing that I can do about the fact that it is warm, but I can adapt by jumping into the swimming pool or putting on cooler clothes or whatever the case may be. Right, now how can we ask this question? Define, elaborate on the meaning of the term macro environment, and of course if it is elaborate, it will be in a split mark form. In fact, the same for define as well. Right, now you need to know the definition. Now, guys, once again, let the mark allocation guide you as to how much you need to answer. If the mark allocation is 4, you need to know 2 of these bullet points. The macro environment refers to the, and now you can say external, refers to external components of the business with, refers to components of the business with everything outside of the business. Well, what you need to know it's external, it's from the outside. For a moment there, I couldn't actually remember to finish the sentence. The macro environment is also known as the external environment, and the business has no control over this environment. Now, guys, we are looking for the word interaction, and of course, outside refers to the interaction of the business with everything outside of the business. The macro environment is known as the external environment, and we have absolutely no control. We can only adapt. Right. Now, guys, just like any other environment, we have a lot of components. Now, guys, you can use a specific acronym to make it easier for you to remember, and that is called PESTLE. And you can see there, the P in PESTLE stands for political, the E is economic, the S is social, the T is technological, the L is legal, and the E is environmental. So, guys, you need to know these components very, very well. If I've explained to you about a case study and having to draw up a SWOT analysis, if you don't know the components, you are most definitely going to struggle to do a SWOT analysis.
Mr. Van Zyl, I've often heard this referred to as a PESTLE analysis. What would that be referring to?
Guys, in grade 12, that is one of the analysis that you need to do. There are certain analyses that we use to analyze our different environments so that we can know where our opportunities and our threats come from, so that we can adapt and start making maneuvers. Now, if I may use my ship analogy again, on my way to Japan, I don't always know that it's going to be plain sailing. It might be that in the 3 weeks that the ship is going to take to get there, we might face storms or icebergs or whatever. I need to make a scan, like a weather report, to know what is going to happen in my future so that I can start turning the ship. You know that a ship doesn't turn on a dime. You need to start making your maneuvers way ahead of time. Now, the bigger the ship, the longer you need in order to adapt the ship. Now, the same with the business. The bigger the business is, the more time I need to know what's going to happen in the future so that I can start making my maneuver. Now, guys, one of the ways that I do this, or that big businesses do this, is by using a PESTLE analysis. And that is to look at all of these different components that you guys see on your screen there. And they analyze each one to see where the threats are going to come from so I can start maneuvering, or if there's opportunities that I want to exploit and I need to start moving my ship in that direction. That is what this is for, and that is a PESTLE analysis. But in Matric, you guys are going to be expected to do one of those. Right, guys, I'm going to move on. Reasons why the macro environment can be a challenge to the business. It's part of your exam guidelines. And as you can see, it says briefly explain the reasons why the macro environment can be a challenge to a business. The word explain means it's middle order, and therefore it's a split mark. Now, guys, we are going to look at this now. Now, you can see that we have a certain sentence, or that this comes from your booklet, and some of these words have been left out. Businesses have, of course, you guys know by now, no control over the macro environment, so you're going to select the word no there. The environment is always, and therefore leads to, for businesses. Okay, now let's see what words fit. The environment is always changing. Now, guys, the macro environment is not stable. It changes all the time. If you think of social trends, what used to be fashion is now not fashion anymore. The way we used to think 40 years ago about the relationships between men and women is not the same as it is today. The environment changes, and the business needs to adapt to this changing environment all the time. If you just look at economic things, the rand depreciates and appreciates all the time, and it has certain impacts on us, and we need to adapt to those changes of the changing currency or the changing value of the rand. So it's always changing, and therefore leads to, now we need to see what we can see. Challenges is the best one that fits there, and it leads to challenges for the business that they need to overcome. A change in one of the environments in the macro environment can affect can affect any of the other environments which will have a what on businesses. Now, we can call that word impact. Right, it has an impact on businesses. Impact means it affects us in a specific way. An increase in interest rates, that is in the what environment? Of course, guys, that is the economic environment, will cause prices to rise, thus affecting people's ability to purchase basic goods and increase poverty levels in the social environment. Whenever it's got to do with people, it will always be social. Right, now guys, this is complicated things. I think we are going to look at the economic environment, I think, in a bit more detail. This is the one that is complicated sometimes for grade 10 learners to understand. Right, the next question says practical examples of each component of the macro environment. We need to be able to give practical examples of each component. Now, guys, you know that we've got the pestle analysis, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. Under each of those, I need to give an example. Right, I will give you those examples just now, and then define practical examples of each component feature of the macro environment. Now I need to explain what those examples mean. Right, so we've got some examples there. Component, the political environment, changes in government often result in, we can see here, result in
policy changes.
Policy changes, yes, of course. A policy is a way government thinks. It's the rules that they set out for how we can conduct businesses. Economic, rising costs due to inflation, petrol price could affect businesses' sales. Now, guys, now let me explain this to you. At the moment, we are in a very, very bad situation because of something that is political. And you guys all know about the war in Ukraine. And what happens now is it has certain economic implications. Our petrol price, or the Brent crude oil price, is going up as a result of the political conflict in Ukraine. It's very far away from us, but it definitely affects me, because all of a sudden it cost me 200, 300 rand more to fill up my car. And that is 300 rand that I would have spent on maybe a McDonald's burger, or I would have spent it on, I don't know, any other luxury item. It's no longer in my pocket. So I no longer have that 300 rand to spend. So therefore businesses will lose sales, because the business has to spend, or the person, the consumer, needs to spend more money on filling up his car. So you guys need to see how these things impact one another as well. There's a political issue, changes in the government or in policy from Vladimir Putin has an economic implication, and that has an effect on how people react to that. Customers may not be able to afford products because of low, and if we look at this one here, income. Now guys, as you would have noticed, I no longer have the 300 rand each time I fill up my car. I fill it up 3 times, 1,200 rand. That makes my income, my disposable income, less. So now I cannot afford certain things that I would have liked to buy, so I won't buy them. Technological, businesses may not be able to keep up with or be aware of, what are we going to say there? Latest, right, and the latest technology. Now guys, let's see how these things impact one another. There's a political issue in the Ukraine that has an economic issue, that is now the rising oil price, that affects the way my income is being spent. And now all of a sudden people are really going to look at technological alternatives. Already businesses are telling their people, you don't have to come to work, we are going to do the remote working thing so that you don't have to travel. So all of a sudden we are going to look at technological alternatives to what's happening in the Ukraine. There's also certain legal things. We are now referring to laws, right, that might have an effect. I know that at the moment they are maybe looking, if this petrol price goes up, at rationing people so that you cannot just fill up your car every time you want to go. You are going to be limited to a certain amount of fuel, I've read on the news, maybe in time to come. And that is legal things that we need to change. And then, of course, environmental, this we can look at things like pollution and so forth. Now guys, you can look at for yourself what words fit in there that makes it logical to remember. Right, reasons why each component feature poses a challenge to businesses, and the middle order question is briefly explain the reason why each component poses a challenge to businesses. Now guys, I have actually explained that to you in my example of the war in the Ukraine. Right, now guys, the next thing that we are going to look at is differences in business functions, and we are going to look at the differences between management and leadership. Right, I think this slide is slightly out of place. I'm going to refer back to it a bit later, or well, Mr. Edwards, I think we I think
we have come to the end of the environment section, so we're going to be moving on to business functions, right? Bearing in mind that there are 8 of these functions. I often have a discussion with the learners in the class as to which are you going to prioritize. You can't prioritize any of these functions. Each of them is a priority. Each of them is important and critical to the success of a business. Right, so first and foremost, we're going to look at the management aspect, management and leadership. The type of question that you can come up with here, elaborate, explain, or discuss the differences between management and leadership. All right, and that's a nice little image that you might have seen before, where a leader is normally the person at the front rather than the manager, who is the person at the back that's instructing the employees. Okay, a leader obviously often setting an example. Right, so let's move on to the answer that's possible for the differences between management and leadership. Now, again, this is quite a nice point to just show you this type of question. So it could come up as a distinguish, it could come up as differentiate, or explain the difference between management and leadership. There are going to be other occasions where we are distinguishing between 2 concepts, and you will be given the opportunity to do so. So let's look at the answer that has been provided to us, and I'll give you an indication as to how many marks is allocated for this. So if it's 4 marks, you need to show 1 difference. Okay, so management, for example, guides human behavior. Okay, you will get your 2 marks for that statement. And then leadership influences human behavior. So you are distinguishing between those 2 points. Okay, and you can see how the two of them relate to each other. One is guiding human behavior, whereas the other one is actually influencing human behavior. Let's move on to the next one, just to reiterate that. Manage tasks to meet targets, whereas leadership encourages new ideas to enhance productivity. Now, please bear in mind that if this was for 8 marks, then you would need 2 differences on either side, management and leadership. But they need to relate to each other, and that first one is a prime example. You can't have guides human behavior on the management side, and this is when you're answering the question, and then encourage new ideas to enhance productivity, because those 2 are not relating to each other. You need to give us guiding human behavior, and then the opposite to that, influencing human behavior.
Mr. Edwards, I also think it is important in terms of the skill. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
In terms of the skill, whenever you are asked a question to differentiate, show the difference, compare, or something like that, you need to draw a table. It makes it way easier for you. and of course for the marker, because you are always writing a paper for a marker. So you would now draw a table almost like that one, management on the one side, leadership on the other, and you make sure that the two bullet points speak to one another, because if you read on a memo the instructions to the marker, it says the differences must be clear. I must clearly see that you are speaking about management, and I must clearly see that you're speaking about leadership. Okay, and then of course, just to reiterate the point that Mr. Edwards has said, you need to look at the mark allocation. If the mark allocation is 4 marks, remember that's 2 marks for each side, each concept. So management will have 2 and leadership will have 2. And guys, just so by the way, if it says explain the differences or differentiate, there's still going to be a split mark. Just because you've drawn a table doesn't mean that you shouldn't give a full sentence or something. But I know out of experience how this one is marked. Guides will give you 1 mark. Human behavior. Now, how can we say, why is it like that? Guides what? It guides human behavior. The other one is it influences. It influences what? It influences human behavior, and that's where your second mark is going to come from. Now, guys, I always say to my grade 10s, there's so much content in business studies, to remember all of it is going to be impossible. You will never get a question in section B that will count 12 marks, 3 differences. It will be maximum 8, which is 2 differences. So how many differences must you know? I would always say 3, just to give yourself a bit of space for section B. Never more than that. Choose the 3 that you will more easily remember.
And I think it's important what you said there. At the end of grade 12, your teacher is not going to be marking your paper. So as teachers, we know how individuals answer questions. So there might be an individual that doesn't answer this type of question in a table, but we were understanding of that. But at the end of grade 12, that the person marking that paper has no understanding of how that individual answers their questions. Okay, so get into the habit of answering your questions in the most appropriate way for your marker. So most appropriate way for this question is in a table. All right.
Are we carrying on, Mr. Edward?
I think we're a little bit tight for time, let's have a look at the next few sections. Okay, so looking at those 8 business functions, you've got human resources, production, general management, public relations, financial, administration, purchasing, marketing. Those are your 8. Okay, so keep those in mind. You obviously this is reminding you from content that you would have gone through at the end of grade 9 in EMS. All right, so let's move on. Business functions refers to the different activities that are performed by a business. Irrespective of the size of the business, you are always going to have the individual, if it's a sole trader, is performing some sort of human resource function. They're probably going to be producing something. They've also got to advertise their product through the marketing function. They've also got to purchase their raw materials. They've also got to maybe get a loan from a banking institution. So that's a financial function. So it's important to recall or remember that it does not matter how big or complex a business is, or how small or how simple a business is, they will be performing all of these roles. Okay, now with regards to the general management functions, you might remember that in grade 8, if I recall EMS, we talk about the different levels of management. The type of question that you can come up with here is elaborate, explain or discuss or describe the levels of management. Again, those are your indicators, those are action verbs. Another indicator is the mark allocation. So you could also have a lower order question where you've got list or give the 3 levels of general management. So if you're giving those 3 levels, that would be 3 marks if you're listing or giving that information.
Right. Mr. Edwards, I also want to say here, there's a different way that you can also be asked this question. It would ask you to discuss the three levels of management. And now you would see, let's say I say discuss the three levels of management, and you all of a sudden see, but the mark allocation is 9. But the guy is asking for 3 things. So it's 3 marks per point. Now, how is that going to be made? Now, guys, the marks are then allocated like this. You will have your first one listed, top level management, which we will do now. That is top level management. You're going to get 2 marks for just naming top level management. And then the description underneath for 1 mark. Any description from the list of things that are there will give you 1 mark. And then the same, that is of course 3 marks for per level, and that is how you go. That is why the mark allocation is so important, to look at how it is going to be asked.
Yeah, because if you were to give just list the 3, you'd be losing out on those additional 3 marks for the description. So keep that in mind. Okay, so there are your 3 levels of management. It might be a bit of a reminder to you. You've got top level management, middle level, and lower level. Okay, so top level managers are your directors, your owners of the sole traders. These are the people that are making your long-term decisions, okay, your strategic decisions. Then you've got middle level, your head of departments in a business, production managers, more your medium term, all right, medium normally 1 to 5 years, okay, and then you've got your short term or your lower level management, where they are making the short term, less than a year or even day-to-day decisions, okay, people like foremen, team leaders, supervisors in shops. Those sorts of individuals would be lower level managers.
I see sometimes what people do is they make an error to think that your lower level management is the workers. Now, guys, please don't make that mistake. Lower level management is not the workers. It is still a management position, and oftentimes the first position that a person can be appointed to when he moves up the management ranks. These are people that are in charge of workers. They work directly with them. That's the people that's going to organize their leave. These are the people that gives them their daily duties. That is what these people do. That is lower level management.
All right, so you must be able to identify the levels of management from a given scenario. So there might be a scenario where you've got to know exactly what a top level manager does, okay, so that you can identify that out of a scenario. So supervise the activities of other functions so that the business can reach its objectives or its vision. Okay, determines the business's vision and makes strategic decisions. Okay, the middle level manager is responsible for specific plans within departments within the business. They take medium term tactical decisions, and they execute the organizational culture in conformance with the organization's policies. Okay, you can see how the role moves down all the levels, and also it's very important that a lower level manager will report to the middle level manager, and then the middle level manager will in turn report to the top level manager. Moving on to the lower level managers, focus on controlling and directing the activities of employees, and responsible for high level of productivity, technical assistance, and productivity, technical assistance, and guidance of employees. Assistance. Yeah, assistance. But all of that will give them a mark. It's not a specific word. Yep, and then take short-term, day-to-day decisions. Right, so as a worker, the first port of call, if you have an issue, if you're needing some assistance, would be your lower level manager or your supervisor. Right, so we can put this in there: department's tactical vision and routine, motivation, operational. That one was motivation, and then operational or operational or day-to-day or routine decisions. Any of those things would have gone in there. Right.
Okay, guys, I'm going to skip over this particular one. This is the roles and the examples. Many of these things we have already covered in the presentation so far. Right, the same with that one. Okay, now guys, the management tasks I think is a nice one to do. For grade 12 it is particularly important because in grade 12 we don't particularly cover this again. We assume that this was prior taught, and then they forget what the management tasks were, and there's a specific question on quality that they then can't answer because they don't know what it is. Now guys, I want you to write down an acronym, and that acronym is POLC, P-O-L-C, and that is the acronym that you're going to use to remember the management tasks. Now, okay, what do we need to do? We need to explain, discuss, or describe the different management tasks of a business. Of course, there's going to be a split mark. You should be able to identify the management tasks from any given scenario or statements, and you can also refer to your WCED core content notes or the booklets. Now guys, you can now see the management tasks there in front of you. The POLC stands for planning. That's the P of POLC, planning. The O is of course the O for organizing. The L is leadership. Another way to say that is directing, but that is giving leadership. And the last one is control. Now guys, there's actually a fifth function, but it's not really part of POLC, and it's a school of thought that thinks that it might be a fifth management function, and that is risk management. Right, but if you can remember the 4 basic tasks in POLC, you are good to go.
If I can just mention the risk management, I mean, we've just spoken about PESTLE and the different aspects that can affect your business, and you don't have control over it, but you have to adapt. That's where the risk management comes in. You've got to be able to predict or forecast or prepare for any eventualities that might come your way. So we spoke about the changes in the petrol price. Those are eventualities that you don't necessarily have control over, but it is a risk to your business. So risk management tries to prepare for those all sorts of issues that may arise. Right.
Now guys, another question that you can get asked is the factors that influence an organization's structure. This is all of this is part of the management function. They're going to ask you to name the factors that influence an organization's structure, and in most cases it's going to be 1 mark. All you guys need to remember is it's the size, the technology, the resources, or the strategic goals. There's nothing really, if you remember this like a parrot, you will remember or get your marks for that. Right. Now guys, these organizational structures are a bit more complicated to remember. You guys need to be able to describe those 3 different organizational structures. The ones that we are going to do is functional, project, and matrix structures. You will find that information in your core content booklet. Make sure that you would be able to discuss it, and then of course guys, you need to be able to name those 3 different structures. Right, the administration function is the next function that we are going to look at. The first question that we are going to do is outline, explain, describe, discuss the activities of the administration function. There's a note there that says you should be able to identify these activities of the administrative function from given statements, scenarios, and case studies. Guys, there are very few places in a question paper where we can really test your insight or your knowledge, and that the only way that we can do that is through a scenario and ask you to identify things or apply things out of the scenario to the content that you've studied. The rest, if you can read well and you can remember and you've got a good understanding of what it means, then you just basically produce that on paper from memory. But in certain cases, if we give you a scenario, I'm testing insight. And as I've mentioned earlier, that might be the bulk of your question paper consists of insight. Right, and we do this through case studies. Right, Now, guys, these are the tasks of the administration function. Now, guys, anything that's got to do with admin has got to do with the flow or the management of information. Now, guys, in each of these, I don't want you to remember all 4 of the bullet points. I only want you to remember 2 of them. 2 of them should be enough, because we will never ask you to just explain one function. We will ask you to explain or one task. We will ask you to explain maybe 2 or 3 of these, and we are not going to expect you to get 8 marks from one of them. So if you remember 2 of these bullet points, I think you are good as golden for each of these activities. Right, the management of information, accounting records, 1 mark, which can be used to draw up financial statements and reports. That's your 2nd mark. Keeping all business transactions. What do I need to do with the business transactions? I need to keep them up to date. Budgets, which is a plan of estimated expenses and income for a specific period. So budgets, if you say to me budgets, that's enough for 1 mark. Now, if you explain what a budget is, that will be your 2nd mark. Collecting and classifying what? The collecting and classifying, of course, is the 1 mark, and the other one is then data. Now, guys, if you can remember 2 of the most easier or the easiest ones for you to remember, that would be good enough for you to get your marks. The next one is handling of information. Information is collected from both where outside and inside the business. Correct and reliable information, 1 mark, should be available, 1 mark, for meaningful decision making and to run the business successfully. Office practice refers to how the administrative staff should handle their duties. Guys, this is about telephone etiquette, the way I dress, the way I speak to people that walk into the business. This is office practice. Right. It covers matters such as proper filing of documents, telephone etiquette, internet usage by staff, and so forth. And then, of course, the last one is the use of information technology. That's our servers and the computers that we use to generate and distribute information to people where they most need it. Right, the purpose of the financial function, I think this is Mr. Edwards was a banker at some point in his life, and I think he would be best suited to explain the purpose of the financial function.
All right. Just to reiterate, these functions are all priorities. If you chat to a marketing manager, they'll say, "Oh, my function or my department is the most important of all the departments within the business." But let's be honest, financial function is probably up there as one of the more important, and most certainly they will argue that case as well. So the type of question that you could come across: outline, explain, discuss the purpose of the financial function. Okay, again, explain, discuss, split marking. Outline would be your 2 marks at the end. Okay, so let's look at some examples that could come up there. The financial function determines how much capital the business needs, establishes the sources for acquiring that capital. Is it your own capital? Is it investments that you've had to take out, or are you getting a loan from the bank? Okay, decides how to invest the funds in the business. All right, and then penultimate, ensures that the business can generate enough income to cover the cost of raising that capital. All right, and then last but not least, prepare financial statements to present to the bank, investors, or stakeholders. This is where stakeholders might come into play, to convince them that the business is financially healthy. All right, so those would be some answers that you would be able to give, again looking at the mark allocation as to see how many of those points you would need to provide to your teacher. Right, moving on. Some types of the sources of financing. Okay, so again, the type of question, middle order question: define, explain, or describe the types of sources of financing. Note there, you should be able to identify the types and sources of the financing from given scenarios. All right, we are reminding you of that every now and again, just to make sure that you are 100% sure that you understand the concept so that you can take it out of a scenario. So let's look at some examples. So this could be an example where you say we're asked list the sources of financing. Bank loans. Bank loans is about going to the banking institution and applying for a certain amount of money. You're not going to get that money for free. You are going to pay interest on that. Bank overdraft is the next one. A bank overdraft is an extension on your account. All right. So say, for example, you have 2,000 Rand in your account. The bank has offered you a 10,000 Rand overdraft. It means that your available balance will now be 12,000. So the 2,000 of your money and then the 10,000 of the bank's money. Again, you're not going to get that for free. You're going to be paying interest on that amount. Right, moving on to asset-based loans. So this is a loan that you'll get based on the assets that you have got. So you would have to provide security, surety, collateral. These are the types of words that might come up. So you might want to get a 50,000 Rand loan. Unfortunately, you can't do it based on your the amount of money that you've got or the amount of money that you earn. But then you say, well, I've got a property, I've got a vehicle that I can put down as security, as surety for that loan. Right, so that's a concept that might be new to you: security, surety, or collateral.
So, in the event that if I default on the loan and I cannot repay it, they have the option of selling property or whatever in order to recover the outstanding balance.
And the term that's often used there is repossessing that property or that vehicle. Okay, you could go and get a grant, okay, from the government. The government has certain schemes that they use to try and assist new businesses to grow. Obviously, it's to their benefit. If the business is successful, then the business will start paying tax. So it's that whole cycle that hopefully will benefit the government in the long run. Receivable finance. Receivable finance is if you're going to a business and you're buying a product from that business and they say, well, you can get 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days to pay that off. That would be your receivable finance. Now, the next two, angel funding.
Mr. Edwards, in terms of the receivable finance, I think there's also something else that they also call receivable finance, and that is where you've got, they've learned in grade 9 in EMS that debtors are an asset to a business.
Correct. Yeah.
We are expecting the debtors to pay me at a certain point in time, and therefore they are an asset to us. And now a receivable finance say, "Ooh, I've got these people, they haven't paid me yet, but I need to get money in order to, how can I say, the amount of time to bridge the time until these guys pay me." So that could also be receivable finance. I know that I'm going to get the money in. I don't have it now, but I'm going to get it in a month's time or 2 months' time.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, lend me money until it comes in.
Yeah, and it's a way of just solving that problem over the short term. Okay, right. Angel funding and venture capital are very similar concepts. It's all about someone that is wealthy and is looking at investing in something that is taking place. So angel funding is normally a wealthy entrepreneur that is investing in a new concept. Whereas venture capital is something where a wealthy entrepreneur, similar sort of concept, but is investing in a business that is somewhat successful, but maybe needs to expand, needs to scale up, get a little bit bigger, but needs some assistance from some wealthy individual. The prime examples that often come up, and we discuss it in class, and I've showed the learners a couple of videos in this respect, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank. Those would be examples of venture capitalists that offer their assistance, but also funding to the individuals that are wanting to expand their business, but they don't necessarily have the funds or the network to do so. Right, looking at the difference between fixed and working capital. So this is could be asked as distinguish between or explain the differences. Now looking at the answer again, as Ms. Van Zyl referred to earlier, the most appropriate way to answer this question is in table format. Right, so let's look at fixed capital. Pays for fixed assets, namely your land and buildings, where now you can see the polar opposite, how they are related to each other. Working capital is not paying for your fixed assets, but it's paying for your day-to-day activities, things that change, the amounts that change very often, raw materials and stock. Moving across back to fixed capital, finance long-term capital needs of a business, whereas working capital short-term. We referred to day-to-day activities earlier. And then just further to show some examples of fixed capital, your capital market, issuing shares to potential shareholders, mortgage bonds, going to the bank and actually getting a home loan. Okay, then you're moving on to working capital. You're looking at credits granted by suppliers, maybe your money market account that you've got, your shorter term loans which need to be paid back within a shorter period of time. So there you can distinguish between the fixed capital and working capital. Again, look at the mark allocation to identify how many points you need to provide. Okay, then you've got the difference between own and borrowed capital. Now, just based on that, you should be able to identify the main difference here. Own capital is your owner has that capital and they've provided that, whereas borrowed capital, you've been able to source it from a financial institution of sorts, a banking institution, or otherwise. Own capital, permanent capital, because the business has no obligation to pay it back. Okay, because the owner has provided it. Okay, the owner is hoping that he'll get some return on that finance. So, and then moving on to borrowed capital, temporary capital, because you need to pay it back over a fixed period of time, depending on the term that has been agreed upon when taking out that loan. Own capital, not a liability for the business because you don't need to pay it back, whereas borrowed capital is a liability. If you remember grade 9 EMS, okay, you spoke about liabilities to a business. It's money that you need to pay back to a certain entity. All right, then moving on to own capital, return on capital is profit, whereas the return on capital is paid in the form of interest for borrowed capital.
Right. Mr. Edwards, there's something I wanted to say here about own and borrowed capital, and that sometimes is very confusing for grade 10s. I always say to them, if somebody, let's say I want to expand my business and I issue shares and there's shareholders that come and they purchase these shares from me. They're not participating in the management, but they purchase these shares. Is it own or borrowed capital?
That would be own capital, right?
Why would that be own capital, Mr.
Because just straight to that first point over there, owner provides that capital.
And also the second point, because we are under no obligation to pay it back. Guys, you can see how that works. The return on capital is the profit, right? They get profit in the form of dividends. We are not paying it back. If the business goes bankrupt, then I'm under no obligation to pay the shareholder his money back. That was the risk that he took when he bought the shares and he became a co-owner. But the bank is not going to be so lenient. The bank is going to say, listen, I don't care if you make a profit or not, you are going to pay me my money back with interest.
Yeah. I think let's just also mention to the grade 10s what dividends is. Dividends is a share in the profit. Okay, so when a business makes a profit at the end of the financial year, they would need to stipulate that, and they don't necessarily need to pay out dividends or share to the shareholders, but that often they do just to keep those shareholders interested. And obviously that's the benefit of being a shareholder, is that you are getting that dividend, which is a share, depending on how many shares you own of the business, it's a share of that profit that you are going to get as a return on your initial investment. Okay, now we're moving on to the purpose of the purchasing function. So we're still working our way through the different functions. Okay, outline, explain, discuss the purpose of the purchasing function. Okay, we should have a few options over here for these answers. Right. Okay, moving on to manage stock to ensure adequate, sufficient levels of stock to carry out business operations. Okay, continuously looking for the best reputable, reliable suppliers. Again, always important to have a reliable supplier. The last thing you want is to be stuck where you are needing to provide your customer with a particular product, but you're waiting on your supplier because they haven't actually provided you with the product itself. Moving on, make regular contact with other businesses, departments to determine their needs. Okay, so again, you as the purchasing function, you need to be able to identify what are the needs within the business. Okay, maybe the production function is requiring a particular type of product. You're responsible for actually making sure that that production function has that product available. Send damaged goods back to the supplier and see to it that it is replaced or you are reimbursed. Okay, so you're responsible for actually checking those products when they arrive. Receive confirmation of all goods according to the specification and the price invoiced. Okay, so are the products that are received exactly the products that you're purchasing? Okay, and then lastly, you negotiate the best possible term of payment with suppliers. That might be a little bit of a strange concept because normally when you go to a shop, you pay straight away. But these aren't necessarily the terms that are used within the supplier or within business. Often there's negotiations that take place. Maybe I pay it over 30 days or 60 days because you are buying in bulk. Often if you are buying hundreds of thousands of products at any one time, you have that bargaining power with that supplier. Maybe you can say, well, I'm going to pay back in 60 days because I'm buying this amount of products. All right, moving on. Okay, the purchasing procedure. This is often a low order question where you might be asked to list or outline the activities of the purchasing function. Also, you might not necessarily need to remember all of them. There's quite a few of them. It might ask for specifically list 4 or outline 4 activities of the purchasing function.
Yeah. Mr. Edwards, I think this is also going to be important for the grade 10s. The moment that we speak about the purchasing procedure, there are 8 steps. Now, guys, always, there's 8 steps and then there might be a description what happens in those 8 steps. Sure. Now, we're not going to go into detail. It's not very, very difficult to study. But get into the habit. The moment that you see purchasing procedure and there's something to do with a step, name the step. Name it and then explain it. Whether they're going to mark it in the form of 3 marks per answer or just 2, you are still covered for that. Always name the step first and then give you your description.
Sure. Okay, so let's look at the options over here. The first one is determine the need of the product. Okay, so what do we need for the business? Okay, so that's the first step. Determine the price of the product. What is the most appropriate price you should be paying for that product? So shop around. Okay, do some research. Choose the most suitable supplier. It might not just be based on price. It might be based on the quality that you're receiving, their ability to deliver it on time, or the ability to deliver it in a particular format. Okay, there's all sorts of different ways of purchasing products these days, particularly online. If someone is able to deliver it at a minimal cost, that might be something that is suitable to you. All right, the next one is then place the order. Okay, with that supplier, receive the order, pay the supplier, okay, distribute that stock to the production function if that's the entity that's requiring that product, and then complete the order. Okay, so that might be a signature stating that it has been received, and that is the end of that purchasing procedure. So again, that could be upwards of maybe 4 points that you might need to remember there. Remember, we're not going to be asking you for 8 to 12 mark type questions these days. Okay, back maybe about 5 years ago, there might have been questions that came up like that, but normally it's maximum 6 to 8 marks per question.
Okay, guys, I'm going to, it was a translated one. It says the importance of stock control is what that should have said. Now, the importance of stock control in terms of the purchasing function. Now, guys, first of all, it enables businesses to determine. I'm not going to go and do that. I've got 5 minutes left. Guys, I'm going to use an example. Let's say you have a factory and you are buying raw materials for your factory. Remember, this is part of your purchasing function. Let's say the purchasing function bought too much stock. What will happen then? Guys, my storerooms will be full of stock. You can't move around. I cannot get my money back until those raw materials are turned into a product and sold. So guys, that means that money that is in my stores cannot work for me. I cannot reinvest it into other things that will make money for me. So I don't want to keep too much stock. The other problem with buying too little stock is what will happen if I run out of raw materials, then I can't manufacture. These guys that work in the factory is still going to come to work, but I cannot give them anything to do. So now the problem is you are going to pay them for doing nothing, and that's going to cost you money. And then, of course, I'm also not going to be able to make products to sell to my customers. So my customers is going to be unhappy with me. So I don't want too little stock. So guys, the purchasing function needs to determine how much stock I need and how much I use in a given time, so that I can buy the right amount of stock at the right price, and it needs to be delivered to me at the right time, and it must be the right quality of things as well. If I've got low quality stock, then of course I cannot make quality products. It is very important to have a stock control system so I can make sure that my stock is not stolen from time to time because I knew a stock take. I don't have too much or too little stock. Now guys, if you have that concept, you understand that, then you will understand the importance of stock control. Now you can see that the answers to this enables businesses to determine the value or the amount of stock on hand. Businesses can check the cost and selling price of products. Ensure that there is enough stock to meet the normal demand of customers. Keep the correct levels of stock on hand. Keep a record of the cost prices and selling prices of stock. Identify theft in the business when physical stock count is compared with the electronic stock control system. Right, now guys, unfortunately our time for this session has run out. I would like to thank my colleague Mr. Peter Edwards for his assistance today, and I hope that you have learned something from us today. And now guys, the content was important and you could have used it to fill in your booklet, but the skill of writing exams for me is way more important out of sessions like this, because this is a revision session. Most of these concepts should have been done in class. How to apply it in a question paper is what the purpose is of these kind of interventions. So I hope that you guys take this to heart, and I hope you've made notes. And if you need to refer back, since this is recording, to go back to things that we've said earlier so that you can take note of it, that would be to your best interest. So guys, from me, I would like to thank you for being with us today or watching this recording, and I will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much, grade 10s. All the very best for the rest of the year. As Mr. Van Zyl has just stated, these are very important concepts considering that you are new to business studies. So you're learning these sorts of ways in which to answer questions as we go along. So make sure you go over or go back in this recording just to find out a couple of details with regards to how we ask questions. But I know you guys are going to do really well, and keep up the good work. All the very best.